I'd love to talk to you about the recent saga of you being arrested in August of last year in France. I think I should say that it's one of the worst overreaches of power I've seen as applied to a tech leader in recent history, in all history. So it's tragic, but I think speaks to the thing that we've been talking about. So maybe can you tell the full saga? What happened? You arrive in France.
I arrived in France last year in August, just for a short 2-day trip. And then I see a dozen of armed policemen greeting me and ask me to follow them. They read me a list of something like 15 serious crimes that I'm accused of, which was mind-boggling. At first I thought there must be some mistake. Then I realized they're being serious, and they're accusing me of all possible crimes that the users of Telegram have allegedly committed, or some users. And they think I should be responsible for this. Which again, like you said, it's something that never happened in the history of this planet. No country, not even an authoritarian one, did that to any tech leader, at least at this scale. There are good reasons for that, because you're sacrificing a big part of your economic growth by sending these kind of messages to the business and tech community. So they put me in a police car, and I found myself in police custody. A small room, no windows, just a narrow bed made of concrete. I spent almost 4 days there. In the process, I had to answer some questions of the policemen. They were interested in how Telegram operates. Most of it is public anyway, and I was struck by very limited understanding, or should I say even lack of understanding, on behalf of the people who initiated this investigation against me about how technology works, how encryption works, how social media work.
I mean, there's something darkly poetic about a tech founder of a platform where 1 billion people are communicating with each other, and you're on concrete, no pillow, for days, no windows. It's like a book. I mean, it reminds me, I'm a huge fan of Franz Kafka, and he's written about the absurdity of these kinds of situations. Hence the Kafkaesque stories. There's a story literally about the situation that he wrote, perhaps predicted, called The Trial, where a person is arrested for no reason that anybody can explain and is stuck in the judicial system for a long time. That nobody, fascinatingly, in that story, neither the person arrested nor any individual member of the system itself fully understand what is happening. Nobody can truly answer the questions. And eventually the person, spoiler alert, is mentally broken by the whole system, which is what bureaucracy can do in its most absurd forms. It breaks the spirit, the human spirit, laden in all of us. That's the negative side of bureaucracy.
I agree with you on the absurdity of this thing. Because if this was a good faith attempt to fix an issue, there were so many ways to reach out to Telegram, to reach out to me personally, voice their concerns, and solve any alleged problem in a way that is conventional and diplomatic, the way every other country on this planet solves these problems, including with Telegram, and we did it dozens of times.
Yeah, you have a nice page showing this is kind of like details that most people don't really think about. But Telegram was at the forefront of moderating CSAM and terrorist groups. There's a nice page, telegram.org/moderation, that shows just the incredible amount of groups and channels that are engaged in terrorist activity and CSAM activity that are actively blocked, found, and blocked by Telegram. So, and a lot of this work, like you said, because of the automation, is done with machine learning. Just the scale is insane. This is stuff that most like noobs like me who are just chatting it up on Telegram don't think about. But there's just like an immense number of people essentially doing things that violate the law on there, and you have to find them immediately and catch it. I guess all platforms have to deal with it, and Telegram was doing a great job of dealing with that kind of content. And what you're saying is the French government had no idea. Do they even know what machine learning is?
It's a concept that is challenging to explain to them, but I think they will learn much more about it by the end of this investigation. That's my hope. In any case, you're right. I mean, if you look at Telegram, we've been fighting harmful content that is publicly distributed on our platform since 10 years ago. Actually, since the time we launched public channels on Telegram. And since something like 8 years ago, we had daily transparency reports on how many channels related to child abuse or terrorist propaganda we've taken down daily. Every day we've taken, maybe we would take down hundreds of them. And if you include all kinds of content that we remove, all the accounts, groups, channels, posts, that would amount to millions of pieces of content every week, hundreds of thousands every day. And then somebody would read the newspaper, get enraged because they would read something about child porn. And this is a subject that is very emotionally charged, and start doing something not based on data and logical thinking and laws, but based on emotions driven from inaccurate input.
Yeah, I think we should make pretty clear that there's no world, no reason that the French government should have arrested you. But here we are. That's the situation you're in. So to be clear, you have to show up in front of a judge. All of this is beautifully absurd. It would be hilarious if it wasn't extremely serious. You have to show up in front of a judge every certain amount of time. And what is that experience like?
In France, they have this role of investigative judge. I don't think you have it in many other places in the world. It means I'm not on trial, I'm being investigated. And in France, it's not just the police or prosecutor asking me questions, it's a judge. Which in my experience is more like still a prosecutor, but it's called a judge. And that makes it harder to appeal. So if you're limited in, say, countries where you can travel, then to appeal that restriction will take you a lot of time. The investigation itself should have never been started. It's an absurd and harmful way of solving an issue as complicated as regulating social media. It's just the wrong tool. So we objected and appealed the investigation itself. We did last year, I believe. We're still not even given a hearing date for the appeal because the process is painfully slow, not just for me, but for everybody, which made me realize the system may be broken in many levels. You have other entrepreneurs affected by the French justice system telling me horror stories about their experiences, where businesses got paralyzed by very unnecessary actions of investigative judges that ended up being unjustified and biased. And in the end, you can perhaps solve it when you reach a higher court and you'll get justice, but you lose a lot of time and energy in the process. So this is the only thing that is, I hope, different and will be different in this case compared to the story you told from Kafka.
I mean, but it does, as Kafka describes, break a lot of people with time. So when do you hope? We should say that you were for a long time not allowed to travel out of France. Now you can travel to Dubai. We're now in Dubai. Got to meet many of the people that work at Telegram. Telegram is headquartered in Dubai, but you're not allowed to travel anywhere else. When do you think you're coming to Texas to hang out with me over there?
That's a hard question to answer because it doesn't depend on just my actions. I can just say this. I am patient. I will not let this limitation on my freedom dictate my actions. I will, if anything, double down on defending freedoms because I experienced firsthand what the absence of freedom feels like, at least during these 4 days in police custody, when you're just stuck, unable to communicate with people that are important to you, when you don't even know what's going on in the world in relation to you personally. So I have no crystal ball that would tell me the future. I can't say that I'm pessimistic. I think we've been able to gradually remove most of the restrictions initially imposed on my freedom last August.
If the French government or the French intelligence agency want to have a backdoor or a way to access private user messages, what would you say to them? Is there anything they can do to get access to the private user messages?
Nothing. My response would be very clear. But it won't be very polite, so I'm not sure
it's good to say here.
It's good to say because you're wearing a tie and
yeah, this is a serious adult gentleman-like program. Yeah, but that is a concern that people have is when you have so much pressure from governments that over time they'll wear you down and you'll give in. And then, of course, other places use that as propaganda to try to attack you. You get attacked by basically every nation. So it's a difficult medium in which to operate. It's difficult to be you, fighting for freedom, fighting to preserve people's privacy. But is there something you could say to reassure people that you're not going to sacrifice any of the principles that you've just expressed if the French government just keeps wearing you down?
I think the French government is losing this battle. This battle is wrong. The more pressure I get, the more resilient and defiant I become.
Yeah.
And I think I have proven that in the last several months when there were attempts to use my situation being stuck here in France by approaching me and asking me to do things in other countries, blocking certain channels, changing the way Telegram works. And not only I refused, I told the world about it. And I'm going to keep telling the world about every instance. Any government, in this case, in particular the French government, tries to force me do anything. And I would rather lose everything I have than yield to this pressure. Because if you submit to this pressure and agree with something that is fundamentally wrong and it violates the rights of other people as well, you become broken inside. You become a shell of your former self on a deep biological and spiritual level. So I wouldn't do that. There are probably other people in the world that would consider that. But I don't care. Telegram disappears to something people don't understand, including in this intelligence services or governments. I don't care. I'll be fine if they put me into prison for 20 years, which, let's be clear, it's not something that I think is realistic. But let's just think about it as a hypothetical situation. I would rather starve myself to death and die there, reboot the whole game, than do something stupid.
Let me ask you about an example of the thing you're talking about. Tell the saga of Telegram in the Romanian election. So amidst all this, you are still fighting to preserve the freedom of speech. What happened? And what were some of the decisions you had to make?
So when I got stuck in France, unable to leave the country for a few months, I was offered to meet the head of state foreign intelligence services through a person I know quite well. It's actually a well-known tech entrepreneur in France, and he's well connected. And he said, "This guy wants to meet you." I said, "Okay, fine. Let's do that, but I'm not promising anything." I took the meeting, and in this meeting, I was asked to restrict what I see as restriction of freedom of speech in Romania. I don't know if you followed the whole saga with the Romanian elections. They had a presidential elections last year. The results got cancelled. Now, Romania at that point, when I had this meeting, was preparing for a new presidential elections. The conservative candidate was not somebody who the French government was supportive of. So they asked me whether I would be shutting down or ready to shut down channels on Telegram that supported the conservative candidate or protest against the pro-European candidates, so they called the guy they liked. I said, look, if there is no violation of the rules of Telegram, which are quite clear, you can't call to violence. But if it's a peaceful demonstration, if it's a peaceful debate, we can't do this. It would be political censorship. We protected freedom of speech in many countries in the world, including in Asia, in Eastern Europe, in the Middle East. We're not going to start engaging in censorship in Europe, no matter who is asking us. And I was very clear to the guy who was the head of French intelligence. I said, if you think that because I'm stuck here, you can tell me what to do, you're very wrong. I would rather do the opposite every time. And in a way, that's what I did. I had a small debate with him about the morality of this whole thing. And then at a certain point, just disclose the content of this entire conversation, because I never signed an NDA. I don't ever sign NDAs with any people like that. I want to be able to tell the world what's going on. And that's quite shocking to me, that you would have people in the French government trying to get advantage of this situation. Of course, if they had nothing to do with the start of this investigation itself, and use it to reach their political or geopolitical goals. I consider it an attempt to humiliate myself personally and millions of Telegram users collectively. And it's quite strange that the same agency asked us to do certain things in Moldova as well. So even before that, I think it was October last year or September, I was arrested in Paris in late August. And then again approached through an intermediary and asked, would you mind taking down some channels in Moldova because there's an election going on and we're afraid there's going to be some interference with these elections. Could you please connect with representatives of the government of Moldova and take care of it? We said, we're happy to take a look at it and see if there's content there that is in violation of our rules. And they sent us a list of channels and bots. Some of them were, so it was a very short list, and some of these channels and bots were in violation indeed of our rules, and we took them down, only a few of them. The rest were okay. Then they said thank you and sent us another list of dozens of channels, many, many channels. We looked at these channels, we realized that there is no solid foundation to justify banning them. And we refused to do that. But interestingly enough, the French intelligence services that were asking us to do this in Moldova let me know through their contact that after Telegram banned the few channels that were in violation of our rules in Moldova, they talked to my judge, the investigative judge in this investigation that has been started against me, and told the judge good things about me, which I found very confusing and in a way shocking, because these two matters have nothing in common. Why would anyone talk to an investigative judge that is trying to find out whether Telegram did a good enough job in removing illegal content in France? What does Moldova have to do with it? I got very suspicious at that moment. Remember, it happened after we blocked a few channels that violated our rules, but before we refused to block a long list of other channels that were completely fine, with just people expressing political views, which I may not agree with, but it's their right to express them. Not extreme views, not views that call to violence. That was extremely alarming. That was a moment when I told myself that there may be more going on here than I initially thought. Initially, I thought, yeah, some people are confused about how technology works. And here, after this case in Moldova, I got much more suspicious. So by the time that head of intelligence services met me to ask about Romania, to help them silencing conservative voices in Romania, I was already wary of what can be going on next.
Yeah, so clearly this was a systematic attempt to pressure you to censor political voices that the French government doesn't agree with. And we should say that you have fought for freedom of speech for left-wing groups and right-wing groups. It really doesn't matter. So it's not, you don't have a political affiliation, political ideology that you fight for. You're creating a platform that, as long as they don't call for violence, allows people from all walks of life, from all ideologies, to speak their mind. That's the whole point. And it happens to be conservative voices in the Romanian election that the French government wanted to censor because currently the French government leans left. But if you flip everything around and the government would be right wing, you'd be fighting for against censorship of left wing voices. And you have in the past many times.
Exactly. Ironically, we received a request from the French police to take down a channel of far left protesters on Telegram in France. We refused to do that. We looked at the channel, peaceful protesters. It doesn't matter for us whether we're defending the freedom of speech of people leaning right or leaning left. During COVID, we were protecting activists that were organizing the Black Lives Matter events. And the other side, the protesters against lockdowns, we protect everybody as long as they are not crossing the lines and not starting to call to violence or incite damage to public property. It's a fundamental right to assemble. It's interesting that people who haven't had this experience of living in countries that don't have freedoms don't always realize how dangerous it is to gradually compromise your values, your principles, your freedoms, your rights. Because they don't understand what's at stake.
Yeah, these things become a slippery slope. So you've, for many, many years, including currently, have spoken very highly of France. You love French history, French culture. I think this situation, this historic wrong that's been done, is, put simply, is just a gigantic PR mistake for France. There's no entrepreneur that sees, that aspires to be the next Pavel Durov, to create the next Telegram, sees this and wants to operate in France after seeing this. There's no justification for this arrest. There's a misapplication of the law, all kinds of pressures, all kinds of behavior that seems politically motivated, all that kind of stuff, all the excessive regulation and the bureaucracy. A nightmare for entrepreneurs that dream to create something impactful and positive for the world. So what do you think needs to be fixed about the French government, the French system, and then zooming out, because you see similar kinds of things in Europe that could enable entrepreneurs, that could reverse the trend that we seem to be seeing in Europe, that is becoming less and less friendly to entrepreneurs? What can be fixed? What should be fixed?
I think the European society must decide where they want the ever-increasing public sector to stop increasing. What they think should be the right size of government. Because today, if you take France, for example, which is a beautiful country with a lot of talented people, but public expenses are 58% of the country's GDP. It's maybe as much or more than in the latest stage of the Soviet Union. So you have this disbalance where you have many more people representing the state as opposed to people trying to bring the country's economy forward by creating great products and great companies. The startup field and my field, social media field, has been affected by it immensely. There was one great startup in this realm in France in the last 10 years. It was a location-based social network was eventually sold to Snapchat. But before it was not sold, the founder asked me whether he should sell. I told him never sell. You have a great thing going. You have lots of users. You have organic traction in many countries. And the first of this kind success story in France. But then he sold anyway in a couple of weeks. And later I met him. He's trying to do a new thing now. I met him and I asked him, I was trying to understand what went wrong. And one of the things he told me about is that while he was trying to run his company, competing with Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, having all this pressure from investors, trying to hire the best people and persuade them to go to Paris. And he did a great job, by the way. But while he was trying to do that, he got also attacked by some silly investigation, again, involving the data protection issues, which lasted forever and was gradually sucking blood of his team and his company. Constant interrogations, disclosure requests. And this is a young company. Mm-hmm. It significantly increases the level of stress, and at some point, I think the pressure was too much. He decided I'm gonna just sell it. Eventually, it turned out that there was no issue. The investigation ended, as far as I understand, with no charges. But such investigations, they have a price, they have a cost. And unless the society realizes the cost of projects, of companies, of startups that are never created or are sold to the United States at the very early stage or other countries, resulting in decreased economic growth, things won't change. I think we just talked to a guy a few days ago who left France and started a business here in Dubai. And one of the reasons he had to leave France is that the government started an investigation on his company and they frozen his bank accounts. And this investigation that involved taxes lasted for many, many years. I believe he said 8 years. And at the end of these 8 years, the government reached to the conclusion that there was nothing wrong. He's good. It's okay. In the meantime, his corporate bank accounts were frozen. His business died. The only reason why he was able to retain sanity is because he moved to Dubai and started a new company, which is incredibly successful. And now he's enriching this city, which we're in right now, with his great ideas and creativity.
And by the way, having interacted with him, there's like a fire in his eyes, the human spirit that fuels entrepreneurship. Whatever that is, he doesn't have to do. He's made a lot of money. He probably doesn't have to do anything, but he still wants to create. And that fire is what fuels great nations. Build new stuff, expand, all of that. And regulation suffocates that.
You have to cherish these people.
Yeah.
But I guess the French public or some part of the French public was misled. And I don't know when, maybe perhaps since the time of the French Revolution, to believe that entrepreneurs are somehow their enemies. They're the evil, rich people that are the cause of all problems. As if only you could make the rich share their ill-gotten wealth with the rest of the population, then every problem will be magically solved. In reality, though, a lot of these people that are starting such companies with fire in their eyes are sacrificing their lives, their livelihood. They're working 20 hours a day. They're experiencing immense stress in order to fulfill the vision and bring value and good to the society around them. They create jobs, they create great services, they create great goods, they make your country grow, they make your people proud. You have to cherish them. But what does the system do to them? It squeezes them out because perhaps there was somebody in the tax authority that decided to advance their career and perhaps was too ambitious and not too smart. So as a result, a company was destroyed. And now the same entrepreneur, by the way, who we talked to, is invited to come back to France. He's being offered really good terms. He said, you're going to open this new venue on Champs-Élysées. We're going to give you the best location. We're going to fund part of it. Tax breaks. And he said, never. Just forget about this. It's impossible. I'm not coming back to France. He's traumatized by the experience. And he's French. He was born there. He has a French passport. So unless things like this change, France will, and the rest of Europe, will keep struggling with economic growth, with budget deficits, with unemployment, and all the other relevant social and economic metrics.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. Me, as many of these nations, I appreciate the historic and the cultural value, and I hope Europe and France flourish, but this is not the components that are required for flourishing.